Hello there villagers, and welcome back to another video here in Stacy's Random POV. And I have been going through it. I've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning because something doesn't feel right about France's government collapsing, to be specific. Now, as some of you might know, I am a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, but don't worry, not that kind of conspiracy. I like to follow through with facts. Yes, I did some research about this entire situation, so I would like for you to come with me and see what I just find out. And before I get into the situation in Paris, France, I have to say, you guys, everything I'm about to say is absolutely, positively, absolutely my opinion and my opinion alone. I am not saying what I'm saying to incite the public or to have any sort of hate or any sort of negativity about this country. Okay, this is just my opinion solely after my very own research, and you are welcome to do the same. Now, with that already said, so do you guys remember this video that came out a few years ago, but it kind of went viral just recently? I'm gonna let it play and I will be back with more commentary. Check this out.
I hope that the comments I'm about to make will not offend the questioner too much and some people around here. I think there is a fundamental misstatement of the issue in the question. We can no longer continue to make policy for ourselves, in our country, in our region, in our continent, on the basis of whatever support the Western world or France or the European Union can give us. It will not work. It has not worked and it will not work.
Right, guys, so that was President Nana Akufo-Addo from Ghana speaking to President Macron from France. This video was from 4 years ago, and you are welcome to check them out in YouTube. This was a very powerful news conference, so if you want to know by details what was said, please check them out. You'll find it very interesting, because this conference right here is what would mark the end of France as we know it today. So after seeing that conference that recently just resurfaced on TikTok, right, I wondered what would make Macron sweat like a whore that doesn't have money to give to his pimp, because that wasn't a regular sweat that this man displayed in that conference. This was, oh shit, I don't know what else to do here, and I have no other choice but to accept your demands now. So he brought me back into a very, very deep rabbit hole. So exhibit 1, not so long ago, I heard that Niger was kicking French government and French policies and French banks off of their countries, and that made me question, but wait, how long has this been going on? And so I did my research, and did you guys know that the French had power in over 13 countries in Africa? We'll get to those countries in a little bit, but first, check out this AI generated short history of what's been happening in Niger. We're not gonna go all the way back, like 1800s back, but we are gonna do a brief look through history with the help of AI. So check this out, and I will be back, and of course I will be reading them for the people who have issues with their vision. So let's get right into it. The military leaders of Niger can count on Nigerian support thanks to anti-colonial sentiment, but for how long? But I do have to tip my hat off to the Nigerians back in the days, because they always aided every African country whenever they needed help. They also helped South Africa, which they didn't have to, but it's still an admirable way of brotherly love to their neighbors on that part of the world. But I digress. Back to the story. French colonialism in Niger got off to a notorious start with a brutal military campaign to expand French control of West Africa in 1899. Over the years, several uprisings took aim at French control, including a Tuareg religion in 1916. But it wasn't until August 3rd, 1960 that Niger finally gained independence. But even so, the French stuck around to court Nigerians' elite, provide military muscle, and sign lucrative mining deals. Since 1960, grinding poverty and political instability have been the backdrop to 5 coups, including the latest by General Abdurrahman Chiani. On July 30, anti-French sentiment was on full display during a pro-coup demonstration outside the French embassy in the capital, Niamey. Macron now has a problem. How does he protect France's interests, which include 1,500 French soldiers at an air base in Niamey deployed to fight armed groups in the Sahel region? Coup leaders in Niger have played to anti-colonial sentiment, but sanctions now threaten to make people's lives even more difficult than they already are, something the military rulers will find challenging to overcome. So after reading all of that, a very interesting question popped into my head. How much money was French making from all of these African countries since they've been quote unquote freed and they got their independence, right? So I Googled it, and this is the amount that popped up on my Google. Somebody let me know if this is accurate. So this is France alone. They own about 400 to 500 billion dollars every year from 14 former colonial countries in Africa. And this is include, and please excuse me if I am saying your country wrong. I'm really trying. Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon. So all of these countries combined were paying France 400 to 500 billion dollars every single year. Considering how these countries are, their state, and how they're considered a third world country, let that sink in for just a little bit. And I don't want this to come off the wrong way, as if I'm talking down about these countries in Africa, but I'm just saying there is no way that they are giving this money to France willingly when they could use those funds themselves for their own infrastructure in their own countries. Considering that this has been happening since the 1960s. And of course, this is not referring to all of the countries in Africa, because as we know, there are 54 countries in Africa, and on the list on your screen, I took it upon myself to give you the list and the years of when these countries supposedly got their independence from France. And as you can see, there are some that are as late as the 70s, which is unbelievable to say the least. But back to the point. Again, I want to stress that this is in no way, shape, or form knocking these countries in Africa, because I am sure that with what you have, you will manage to live your life with dignity and with respect. It is no better than living in this country with just Section 8 and just living in the projects. We're all trying to survive in this world, all of us. Now, going back to France's big issue, after all of the African countries cut ties with France, you would think that they would have a contingency plan, especially since they have, since the 60s, collected so much money from these countries. You would think that they would be prepared for when stuff hit the fan. But of course, they weren't. And here we are today in 2024. In the beginning of this year, another country came out to complain about France and their practices. And please, I ask that you excuse me. I do not know how to pronounce this country's name, so I will refrain from saying it. However, the main rep for this country said that France have been moving like the very same kings and queens that they themselves cut their heads off. And of course, we all know who he's talking about. He's talking about King Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, the queen, who said, "Let them eat cake." They all got sick of them, cut off their heads in the middle of their square for everybody to see. Now, the rep for this country said that this is how Macron's presidency and his people were behaving, that they were behaving very inappropriately, very nasty, and they thought that their poop don't stink. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Then he said that French soldiers have been moving into their territory and have been asking for colonial taxes. They are saying that France now is trying to treat them like France have been treating the African countries, the countries that they've been extorting money from the 60s for no reason. So all of that is happening. All these other countries are now seeing France. And then that government rep went on to say how France have been depositing 85% of that money into their bank, the Bank of France, and then 15% of that into basically all of the dirt that they would do. And then they would use the assets from their country in order for them to keep on with their expenses. Basically, they were feeding on to this entire system to maintain their way of life. So then, which led me to the next question that came to my mind was, how were they exactly able to get away with this from these African countries for so long? And it led me back to this research about this book written by two individuals. One of those individuals is a French journalist and writer, and the other is a African economist. And it just shed so much light into how they did it. And just to give you a little bit of an example of how they did what they did and how they got away with it, they explain how in the 60s, when they gave their independence to all of the African countries, Guinea were opted to get their full independence from France, so that they don't have any more deals or agreements with France whatsoever. So what France decided to do was to send over their spies to Guinea and destroy their economy, kind of basically like crash their market, forcing Guinea to get into an agreement with France. And that is how all the other countries follow suit, because they saw what they did to Guinea. So that's just a little bit about that part of my research to why France is going through what they're going through today. And of course, they went on to explain how the francs were useless, the African francs, and how they were just a big scam, and they just didn't bring any value. So please take your time and check the book out. I know I'm gonna butcher their names, but it's by Fanny Bajard and Dongo Samba Silla. It's a great read. You will learn so much about this book, and it breaks down each issue that each country had with France. Now, moving along to the main, and this is not to bring any hate towards any French citizen in the world. This is just my research. I am sure that there are many other French people who stood up to the mistreatment of the African people who were part of this 14 countries. But I digress. So fast forward to now. This is what French is going through. I'm going to play the video of all of the news clips that are speaking about the fall of France. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much. I hope you subscribe or at least like the video. It took me a long time to edit this. It literally took me 4 hours to edit this video, and I just gave it so much attention, so much appreciation, so much love, and I just thought that it would be a great thing for me to share this. Let me know what you guys think. You guys already know how I do things here. Once you subscribe, you automatically become a member of this village. You love this village. You appreciate this village because, baby, it takes a village. I'll see you guys on my next video. Have a great rest of your weekend. Happy Friday.
Michel Barnier has been brought down by a no-confidence vote in Parliament that has succeeded. 331 MPs in the parliamentary chamber voted in favour of the motion, expressing no confidence in the Prime Minister Michel Barnier and in his government. That means that Michel Barnier has been brought down by a parliamentary vote. The first time that a French Prime Minister has been brought down by a parliamentary vote in this country since 1962. His government now falls, and he will have to tender his resignation to President Emmanuel Macron.
So what's next for France's government? Well, Michel Barnier is likely to stay on in the form of a caretaker government handling day-to-day affairs. But it's now up to President Emmanuel Macron to once again nominate a prime minister, a complex task given that he or she may have to survive a no-confidence vote in a highly fragmented National Assembly. New legislative elections are not possible before next July. There have also been calls for Macron to resign, although this seems highly unlikely. The president was heavily criticized this summer for taking on the sole role of choosing the prime minister without really consulting other political parties. Political analysts told us that it's time for Macron to let go and allow the MPs to make their choice.
The French Prime Minister Michel Barnier has just lost a vote of no confidence. 331 votes against him. That means he's becoming the shortest-lived Prime Minister in the history of the Fifth Republic since 1958. That's after the far-right party of Marine Le Pen, the National Rally, joined forces with the NFP left-wing alliance to topple this government. Even if there are mechanisms that exist to avoid a government shutdown in France, the issues, of course, will remain given we have a hung parliament since the snap elections in July. President Macron will have to name a new prime minister over the next few days. Who will it be? Will he reach out to the center-left to form a wider coalition? As Michel Barnier put in his farewell speech on Wednesday night from the National Assembly, the issues will not disappear with the magic of a no-confidence motion.
Majority has been found for censure motion 288. 331 in favor. The majority has been achieved, so the motion of censure has been passed. No need for a second motion. The conclusion for the bicameral The committee for the 2025 Social Security Finance Bill will be considered rejected. Given this vote, which was in conformity with Article 50 of the Constitution, and therefore the Prime Minister must tender his resignation to the President.
We are now getting reports that France's Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, has forced through his budget bill without a vote. Now, that risks a no-confidence showdown. So he has pushed the Social Security budget through without a vote in Parliament, and this threatens the entire government and could see it collapse.
While we have you, Britt, you are our foreign correspondent. There's another major shakeup happening now in international politics. French lawmakers apparently just voted to oust the country's prime minister in the first successful no-confidence vote since 1962. What's going on with the French government?
Yeah, I mean, there's no end to the political crisis there. 288 ballots were needed. They reached 331. As a result, now Barnier, he is obliged to present the resignation of his government. And the budget, which was the cause of his downfall, is now defunct. So this is a big test for France with, as I say, no clear end in sight to this political crisis. We know that there won't be any new parliamentary elections until July. So until then, the Assembly is kind of in a bit of a deadlock. Nevertheless, President Macron will probably try and appoint someone new fairly quickly to make up his government because, you know, he won't want to be embarrassed. President-elect Trump is due in France this weekend to be at the opening of Notre Dame Cathedral, but certainly there will be an impetus from Macron to act as soon as he can.
Britt Clinton, thanks so much, covering a lot of ground for us while you're here.